Alcohol finds its way into happy events, wedding ceremonies, birthdays, hangouts, and holidays. You can imagine how shocked the people of Vancouver, British Columbia were when they discovered it had been converted into a murder weapon. This was the doing of none other than the infamous Canadian serial killer, Gilbert Jordan. Gilbert earned his nickname, the Boozing Barber, from the public as a result of his skills as a barber and his constant drinking. He was linked to at least 8 murders, but was convicted of only 1. These murders he executed by paying and persuading the victims to guzzle alcohol until they died from excessive intake of the substance. Jordan is said to be the first Canadian to have committed murder with the use of alcohol. In today's video, we'll be examining his life, including his journey through the world of crime from misdemeanors to felonies. Let's get into it. Jordan was born on December 12, 1931 in British Columbia, Canada. He was the second child of his parents, Edward and Winfred Elsie. The family did okay financially as both parents worked hard to keep the family afloat. However, his parents' marriage soon came to an end and the couple got divorced out of a mutual agreement. Jordan was a lonely child even before the divorce and was often bullied in school. There are theories he might have resorted to drinking in order to escape his rejection, before it gradually grew into an addiction. Shortly after the divorce, Edward and Winfred got remarried. Jordan was a mama's boy, and the custody arrangement didn't change that as she visited her children frequently. However, the relationship went sour in 1947 after her son dropped out of school in the 8th grade and dived straight into the life of crime and excessive drinking. His mother was raised a Christian and didn't allow her sons or husband alcohol in the house. Winfred couldn't tolerate Jordan's heavy drinking, so she steered clear of him. Jordan's alcoholism was getting out of control, so he took up a job at an auto wrecking yard in order to support his drinking habit. This job he lost as quick as he found it, due to him frequently being drunk at work. He took up multiple other jobs over the years. Jordan was arrested multiple times during his teen years for various crimes, including theft, assault, and heroin possession. He soon found himself behind bars at the age of 18, due to him stealing a car and being sentenced to a year in jail. To him, this time in prison seemed to be more of a fun and productive getaway, rather than a punishment or rehabilitation. Jordan met like-minded criminals there and enjoyed the thrill of hearing their criminal tales. He returned to his life of criminal activities as soon as he was released from jail and spent the next 10 years in and out of jail for a series of crimes, including rape, indecent assault, abduction, hit and run, and drunk driving. In 1961, Jordan did something that proved him to be more than just a troubled criminal. He had abducted a 5-year-old Aboriginal girl in his car. He was approached by an RCMP officer before he could try anything with her, so the circumstances surrounding the abduction and his intentions for her remained unknown. He was arrested and charged for this crime, but was acquitted of it. A few months after this incident, Jordan seemed to consider suicide, when he threatened to jump off the Lions Gate Bridge. He called a newspaper prior to arriving at the bridge to inform them about his plans, so everyone believed it was just a desperate attempt to get attention. They turned out to be right, when Jordan waited for a crowd to gather while standing on the bridge. Without attempting to jump off, he finally got off the bridge after a defense lawyer talked him into it. The following year, on the 3rd of March, Jordan was arrested again for abduction and theft. He had convinced 2 women to keep him company. He drove them to an area, Cole Harbour, where they all drank vodka produced by Jordan. He left one of them stranded there, taking off with her purse in his car after she had passed out from feeling sick. The other woman in the car claimed she was taken against her will. He drove her to North Vancouver, where the woman alleged she was raped by Jordan. He was charged for theft, abduction, and rape. He displayed his disregard for laws and authorities in the court when he shouted profanity at the judge. The latter sentenced him to 6 months in jail for contempt of court. He was subsequently exonerated of the rape charges and got 2 years in prison for the theft. He applied for an appeal on this judgment and won. The judge reasoned he was under the influence of alcohol when he committed the offense and never had the intention of stealing the woman's purse. From his victory in this case, it is speculated that he had gotten the idea he could get away with anything using alcohol as an excuse, which could explain how Jordan murdered his first victim not long after this. Ivy Rose met her death on the 17th of January 1965, when she accompanied Jordan binge drinking all night. She was a switchboard operator he had met that night before both parties decided to lodge at a cheap motel. Her body was discovered the next morning on the floor of the motel, naked and lifeless. The man who had lodged in with her was nowhere to be found. A medical examination showed her blood alcohol concentration level to be 0.11% to 0.55% over the amount required to kill an average-sized human. Ivy Rose's death was ruled an accident. The murderer, on the other hand, was free with no consequences whatsoever. 4 days after this murder, he submitted an application for a change of name from Elsie to Jordan. There were no public explanations for this action, but it was granted on February 23, 1965. While Ivy Rose lost her life tragically, much to Jordan's amusement, he moved on with life. He couldn't stay out of trouble. He was arrested over and over again for several crimes, including indecent public exposure. Nevertheless, Jordan made a few smart choices to enhance his living. He bought mini stocks which brought high returns. He also got married to a woman named Renona Mary in 1972. A year after his marriage, Jordan was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison for sexual assault. He spent just a year locked up before he was released on parole. His wife stood by him during this period, but the marriage was still short-lived. He reportedly abused his wife and cheated on her in a drunken state on several occasions till she decided she had enough. The couple separated in 1975, and the divorce was finalized in 1983. The same year they got separated, he kidnapped a female patient from a mental institution and had sex with her. He was charged for kidnapping and having sexual intercourse with a feeble-minded person. During the trial, he was subjected to mandatory psychological evaluation, since these actions can only be of someone with more than questionable mental health. A psychiatrist diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder. The psychiatrist further explained this would amount to disregard for the rights of others, which could ultimately induce unlawful activities. Jordan got a 26-month sentence to be spent in Haney Correctional Institution for the crime. He acquired cutting hair as a skill during his time in prison. Upon release, he opened up a barber salon and named it Slocon Barber Shop. According to neighbors, the shop was rarely open for business. It was majorly used for alcohol parties instead. These parties usually involved women and numerous bottles of alcohol. Jordan would get the women drunk, then steal their jewelry to sell in the shop the following day. As his alcohol addiction and parties ferociously grew, he needed more supply of alcohol without any limitations. He turned to a bootlegger, Peter, who sold his alcohol at $7 higher than stores but without restrictions. Jordan's investments allowed him to be able to afford his alcohol addiction. Jordan struck again 15 years after his first murder. He checked into a hotel with his victim, Mary Johnson, on the night of November 30th, 1980. He then vanished from the hotel the following morning, and there were no witnesses to link him to the woman or the hotel room that day. When the police arrived at the scene, they found her naked and dead on the floor of the room. Her BAC level was 0.34%, high enough to kill a human being. Just like the first murder, it was ruled an accidental death from overdose. An ethanol overdose was not uncommon in the region during this time, so there was no clear reason to suspect anything else. Jordan committed another murder less than a year after Mary Johnson's. Barbara Paul was the victim he lured this time around. They both lodged at the Glenaird Hotel on September 11, 1981. Once again, the next morning, Barbara's body was found lifeless in the room. It was ruled an accidental death when her BAC report read 0.41%. At this point, there was no indication Jordan would ever get caught since the deaths weren't even recorded as homicides by the police. On July 30th, 1982, Jordan invited a prostitute, Mary Johns, to his shop. She was dead before morning. Her BAC level report came back with a sky-high 0.76%. It was obvious they had been binge drinking, but who would have thought anybody could be coerced into drinking to death? Just like the previous murders, her death was ruled as an accidental overdose. This was the first murder to have occurred in his shop. The following year, Jordan remarried to a woman named Maria Elvira in 1983. However, the relationship turned sour really quick. She accused him of being physically abusive and always under the influence of alcohol. She walked out of the relationship less than 5 months after their marriage. The divorce was settled in 1987. Over the next 4 years, he scattered 3 other bodies around town. His 5th victim was Patricia Thomas. She met her death at the Slocon Barbershop on December 15, 1984. Her alcohol level was 0.51%. Another woman, Patricia Andrew, was murdered on the 28th of June 1985. with a BAC level of 0.79%. Her death was once again written down as an accidental overdose. Jordan had managed to kill 6 people without any eyebrows raised from the authorities, but his luck soon ran out when he murdered his 7th victim, Vanessa Lee Buckner, on October 12, 1987. This whole time, he had targeted First Nations women, usually prostitutes and alcohol addicts up until this point. It's believed that Jordan thought it'd be easier to get away with the previous murders because of his victim status as members of oppressed minority groups. Vanessa, however, was white. Coincidentally, her case was the first to pique police interest. Vanessa Lee Buckner was a 27-year-old drug addict. She had just lost her newborn to social services after it was born with drugs in its system. With the loss of her child, she slowly drifted into depression and was vulnerable when she met Jordan. They met at a beer parlor before moving the party to Niagara Hotel, where they booked a room. Within 12 hours, the pair had downed a bottle of vodka and rum. Peter would later testify in court that Jordan called him to deliver alcohol twice that day, which was unusual because it used to be just once. He and Vanessa had sex thereafter. Just like his routine, he slipped out of the room by 6 a.m. By 7:40 a.m., he anonymously called the cops to report the death. The cops found her lifeless body naked on the floor. Their suspicion grew when her alcohol level came back at 0.91%. Vanessa had been battling with drug addiction, but everyone knew she was a moderate drinker. She wouldn't have willingly drank that much. The cops immediately opened an investigation. They traced the anonymous phone call to Jordan's hotel room at the Marble Arc Hotel, where he had been lodging for over a year. He was taken in for questioning, but with the absence of substantial evidence to detain him, he was released. He murdered his 8th victim just over a month after. The police received an emergency call from the Glenard Hotel management on the 9th of November 1987. They had just discovered a dead body in one of the hotel rooms, the second one Jordan would leave in the hotel. It was that of 53-year-old Edna Shade. She was found naked as well, and her alcohol level was 0.77%. Her death raised many questions because she was an old Christian woman who had no history of alcoholism. In the process of investigating, they ran the fingerprint found on the bottle of drinks and the glasses. It was a match with Jordan's fingerprint in the system. This DNA result was also insufficient to convict him of murder, so they trailed him in order to get concrete evidence. During this surveillance, he was heard saying to one of the prostitutes he had picked up, "Have a drink, down the hatch baby, $20 if you drink it right down. See if you're a real woman, finish that drink, down the hatch, hurry, right down, you need another drink, I'll give you $50 if you can take it." The cops were able to potentially save the lives of 4 women by breaking in at the brink of them losing consciousness. Notwithstanding, they still had no basis to arrest him because he was merely convincing the woman to drink. This changed on November 23rd. On this day, Jordan was trailed after he had picked up an Aboriginal prostitute by the roadside. The pair had settled down to drink in a bar and moved to a hotel afterwards. Police officers waited near the hotel room so they could swing into action if anything went wrong. Few hours had passed when they heard wincing in the room. They immediately broke in and found the lady unconscious. Jordan was bent over her, forcing alcohol down her throat. His MO became clear to the police. He pressured his victims to drink until they blacked out, then committed the murders by filling them up with alcohol afterwards. Finally, they had got the evidence they needed to nail him once and for all. He was taken into custody while his victim was rushed to the hospital. Luckily, she survived. He was charged with the first-degree murder of Vanessa Lee. During the trial, Jordan confessed to the killing without showing any remorse. He said he watched as black fluid ran down her nose and mouth while she was drinking. His charge was reduced to manslaughter when they couldn't prove intent for the crime. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in jail. Jordan appealed the case and had it mitigated to 9 years. The murderer spent only 6 years behind bars before he was released back to society on parole. He was placed on probation after his release in 1994. The conditions included staying in Vancouver Island, never to be in company of women while alcohol was being consumed, and steering clear of establishments located in areas marked Red Zone. He subsequently made a ridicule of the system by breaking each of these rules. He violated a condition by drinking with a woman, Andrea Jones, at Port Renfrew Hotel on November 2nd, 2000. and the second one he violated when he chose a restaurant included in the red zone for an interview with a reporter. He was arrested on November 23, 2000 for these violations. On April 16, 2001, he was sentenced to 12 months in jail for the first violation and 3 months for the second. Both counts ran concurrently, so he was released after a year. Jordan breached his probation again on August 11, 2002 when he left Vancouver Island for Saskatchewan. He was found 2 days later, but not before he landed a woman in the hospital. He lodged at York Hotel in Swift Current with Barber, who was also an alcohol addict. She was hospitalized the following day after they both drank all night. Her alcohol addiction made it difficult to prove she was compelled by Jordan, so no charges were pressed against him. On February 3, 2005, the police department decided the next step to contain Jordan was putting a bolo warning the unsuspecting public about his criminal records. This might have put a stop to his murders, but Jordan subsequently breached his parole several times by drinking with women and became a regular at the police station. He died in Victoria, British Columbia on July 7, 2006. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this in the future. Also comment down below what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching and have a good one.